Adam was an ordinary man living an ordinary life. He worked in a small-town library, spending his days surrounded by books and quiet. But his nights were anything but peaceful. Every night, without fail, he had the same dream. He would find himself in an old, dilapidated house. The house was dark and gloomy, with creaking floorboards and cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. In one particular room, he would always see a woman, her face shrouded in shadow. She held a knife, its blade gleaming ominously in the dim light. The woman would slowly approach him, the knife raised high, and just as she was about to strike, Adam would wake up in a cold sweat. At first, Adam dismissed these dreams as nothing more than vivid nightmares. After all, who hasn't had a recurring dream? But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the dreams began to feel more real. The house in his dreams looked eerily similar to an abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town that he had passed by countless times. One night, while walking home from work, Adam decided to take a shortcut through the woods. As he passed the abandoned mansion, he felt an overwhelming sense of dread. He could have sworn he heard a faint whisper on the wind. Gathering his courage, Adam walked up to the mansion and peered through a broken window. To his horror, he saw the same room from his dreams. The room was dark and dusty, but there, in the corner, was a woman. She was sitting in a chair, her back to him, and in her hand, she held a knife. Heart pounding, Adam ran away from the mansion. For days, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was following him. He started to notice strange occurrences around his home. Objects would move on their own, and he would hear footsteps in the night. Adam was convinced that the woman from his dreams was somehow connected to these strange happenings. Determined to uncover the truth, Adam began to research the history of the abandoned mansion. He spent hours at the local library, poring over old newspapers and historical records. Eventually, he discovered a newspaper article from the early 1900s about a series of mysterious deaths that had occurred in the town. One of the victims had been found in the very same mansion, stabbed to death with a knife. With this new information, Adam realized that the woman in his dreams was more than just a figment of his imagination. She was a ghost, trapped in the mansion and seeking revenge. Adam knew that he had to do something to stop her. Armed with a flashlight and a cross, Adam returned to the abandoned mansion. As he entered the house, he could feel the presence of evil all around him. He slowly made his way through the dark hallways, his heart pounding in his chest. Finally, he reached the room where he had seen the woman so many times. There she was, sitting in the same chair, holding the same knife. As Adam approached her, she turned to face him. Her eyes were filled with hatred and rage. She raised the knife and lunged at him. Adam dodged her attack and swung the cross at her. The ghost shrieked and disappeared. When Adam awoke the next morning, he felt a sense of peace that he hadn't experienced in a long time. The recurring dream was finally over. However, he knew that the experience had changed him forever. He had faced his fears and emerged victorious. In a quiet village, there lived an old woman named Sarah. She had a strange mirror in her house. The villagers said the mirror was cursed, but Sarah never believed them. She bought it from a dark, dusty shop many years ago. One night, as Sarah cleaned the mirror, she noticed something odd. Her reflection didn't move. It just stared back at her with cold, empty eyes. Sarah felt a chill, but she thought it was just her imagination. She went to bed, but strange noises filled the house. A faint whisper echoed from the mirror, calling her name. Terrified, Sarah covered the mirror with a cloth, hoping the noises would stop, but the whispers grew louder. Suddenly, the cloth fell off, and Sarah saw a shadowy figure inside the mirror, grinning wickedly. The figure stepped out of the mirror and stood in front of her. Sarah screamed, but no one heard her. The figure looked exactly like her, but its eyes were dark, empty pits. It whispered, Your soul is mine now." Before Sarah could run, the figure grabbed her and pulled her into the mirror. The next morning, the villagers found Sarah's house empty. The only thing left was the mirror, but now it had a new reflection. Sarah, trapped inside, her eyes filled with terror, silently screaming for help. The villagers say that if you stare into the mirror too long, you might see Sarah, and if you do, the cursed figure might come for you next.